For the first time in Inter Miami history, the team has won back-to-back games. For the first time in Inter Miami history, the team has won a game by more than one goal. For the first time in Inter Miami history, the team has an MLS All-Star player. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Miami Total Football Radio, aka Miami Total Football Radio. We're coming to you, or at least I'm coming to you, from Los Angeles, LA, home of the 2021 MLS All-Star Game and festivities. My name is Franco. Panizo, half of the co-hosting team of this podcast, the number one podcast on all things Inter Miami. Joining me from South Florida, lovely South Florida, is Steve El Primo Brenner. Steve, how are you doing? How is South Florida today?
South Florida misses you greatly. People are sobbing on the streets. They don't know what's happening. They asked me when the next podcast is. Is it going to happen? So no, but they'll be pleased to know that we're back up and running. And it's a little cloudy, but it's okay. But the sunshine is continuing to fall on Phil Neville and Inter Miami right now.
Oh, that's a nice little metaphor there. Nice little switch there.
I don't know if sunshine falls on you though, but anyway, you know.
It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't rise on you, so falls on you works.
It's covering him. He's covered in sunshine. Yeah.
That works. So, as you know, Inter Miami's coming off a victory from this past weekend. I'm in LA to cover the All-Star Game. I'll be back on Thursday ahead of the Friday match versus Orlando City. So, obviously, not sure how this sounds. I've made a makeshift office in the Airbnb I'm staying in here in Los Angeles. Hopefully, for the listeners, it doesn't sound too bad. But if it does, we apologize in advance. We obviously wanted to give you guys a show this week because this weekend's game was notable. This upcoming game is also notable, and there's been plenty of other news that's happened in between already. So there's a lot to talk about. So, Steve, let's get to it. Okay, Steve, so Inter Miami won this past weekend for the first time in franchise history by multiple goals. First game it's ever done that, and they won back-to-back games with a 3-1 victory over Toronto FC at home at Drive Pink Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Before we even dive into the game, or a little more of the X's and O's and the performances and what happened, like we normally do, we normally start there. I think we have to start with one of, if not the biggest talking point after this match, which was Rodolfo Pizarro and Phil Neville's, I don't know if it's a run-in, but their exchange of words that they had due to Rodolfo Pizarro being substituted about midway through the second half in the 67th minute, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. While he was on a hat trick, he had 2 goals in the game. We haven't really spoken about it too much, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I know that there's plenty of Miami Total Football Radio listeners that are also curious to hear what you have to say.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, you know, Phil Neville's the manager. He makes the calls. Of course, I think you ask any player if they want to stay on or go off. They all want to stay on, especially when you've scored 2 goals, especially when you've suddenly come to form. You feel like you're the main man again after sort of 18 months of purgatory and not really doing a lot. But I've got no qualms with it, really. I think Phil Neville will trot out the same old thing that probably most managers would say. It's my call, but I'm delighted to see his reaction. He's clearly hungry, and then that we fire him up even more for the next game. We know that, you know, behind the scenes they haven't been particularly impressed with Pizarro. Pizarro hasn't been particularly impressed with them. There's still a move away in the, you know, at the end of the season. All that's still on very much on the table. So of course he was going to be upset, but you know, he'll go into Friday's game fresh and full of confidence. Maybe got a bit of anger in him, which is good, and they want to see that. I think, you know, coaches don't want to see people just, oh, okay, fine, you can take me off, great. He'd rather see him being upset for sure.
Well, I don't know if that exchange is something Phil Neville had in mind when he subbed Rodolfo Pizarro off, that he expected him to get angry or upset or frustrated. I understand if Phil Neville wants to take someone out of the game. That's his call. He's the coach. I don't understand why Rodolfo Pizarro was one of the first substitutions. I just don't get the reasoning for that. He's on a hat trick. He's someone that hasn't played a whole lot as of late, so he's got energy to spare. They didn't know about his MLS All-Star participation, I imagine, at that point, because they actually, Rodolfo Pizarro, with a member of Inter Miami, they landed in Los Angeles around the same time I did, which if I'm not mistaken, was 10 a.m., 11 a.m., Pacific time, so local time here in LA. So I don't know why Rodolfo Pizarro was the first substitution. If he wanted to sub him out later in the game or just wanted to bring him out, completely understand that. I just don't know why he was one of the first substitutions, because he was
I
part
don't
of
think
the
doesn't
first
matter.
pair. Of course it matters.
Irrelevant.
Of course it's
irrelevant.
not
Doesn't
irrelevant.
matter.
That's why Pizarro probably took it as a slight, because you're on a hat trick. He was still showing energy. He was still showing energy, still trying to get in on the end of things and make things happen. It's not like if he was showing fatigue or not running around anymore, I would get the substitution. But he's still running around. He's moving about. It's obviously a game where he's on a hat trick, and then you take him out as one of the first two subs. I don't understand that. Like third or fourth sub, like okay.
What was the final score?
It was 3-1.
Okay, they won, right?
Sure, but what does that have to do with subbing out?
They won.
Well, what does that have to do with subbing? What does that have to do with subbing out Pizarro?
He scored 2 goals. That's it.
But what does that have to do with subbing out Pizarro?
Well, why not? I mean, it's the coach's call, and he was just saving him. He did his job. He done his job. Got
saving him? Why not save Higuain? Again, Pizarro is someone that hasn't played a whole lot this season. So why make him one of the first substitutions? Like, what's the reasoning for that? Just wanted to.
I think you're looking too deeply into it, mate. Just like when you harshly criticised David for shouting at Gonzalo Higuain. I just honestly, you keep the players hungry, keep them interested. I don't see anything wrong with it. Of course, he'd be upset if Pizarro wasn't happy. That's it. He'd be upset if he just took it. Okay, boss, fine, see you later. He wants him to show a bit of anger and a bit of fight. No player wants to come off, but did it for the good of the team, and then you move on. You wait, and we'll see what happens on Friday.
I mean, look, every decision a coach makes is obviously with the intention of bettering the team. I imagine there's gambles that coaches take, just like he gambled whether he gets frustrated or not. He could also be gambling that he loses Pizarro, who grows even further frustrated with him, because the two. Not only did Pizarro, when he came off the bench, and we didn't even mention this, but when Pizarro was, when the sign comes up and his number's called, he walks very slowly, almost surprised that he was being subbed off, and he kind of looks at Phil Neville. Not sure if he said any words to him. I imagine he did, but from the press box, can't really tell. And he just walks straight towards the bench. He doesn't even walk by Phil Neville, doesn't walk next to him. There's no handshake, there's no embrace. Sits down. And I remember Phil Neville turning around at a point, going to the bench maybe to say something, and then he turned back around, Phil Neville did, and focused his attention back on the game. After the full-time whistle, Phil Neville looks for Pizarro, puts his arm around him, and the two walk back on the field, and they have an animated exchange in which both of them are gesturing quite a bit with their arms. After the game, Phil Neville said that he was reminding Pizarro that this is a team game, and that it's not about any one individual. So that was the message that he was relaying to Pizarro. But he also said, like you previously mentioned, that he loved the reaction from the Mexican international. But listen, we know that their relationship hasn't been the best. We know that they haven't always seen eye to eye. You have said multiple times on this podcast that you expect Pizarro to be gone at some point in the near future. Probably won't be here next season. But again, given all those things, given everything we just mentioned about their relationship, I could see why Pizarro took it as a slight that he was one of the first substitutes.
100%. Absolutely. 100%. You could understand that. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, when you look back at the history, that's completely understandable. But I don't see anything wrong with the decision, to be honest. I think it was fair enough. Keep him nice and fresh, keep him hungry, and then you see the best out of him. Give him a start on Friday night, and then we'll see. Look, he's playing the best football of his Inter Miami career so far. So of course he's going to be upset, but then you just move on to the next game.
Would he take Gonzalo Higuain off in a similar situation? 2 goals, 3-1 game, 67th minute.
Look, he completely axed him from the squad for being unfit. So I don't think you'd have a problem about taking him off.
On a hat trick? I don't know, man.
I don't know. I mean, we're going. I mean, on his birthday. I mean, look, I just, it's game management, it's season management, it's squad management, all those kind of things. I don't see. I haven't got a problem with it at all.
All right. Well, again, like I said, just to reiterate, if he had been the third sub, the fourth sub, okay, like your time's been called, you had your opportunity, but the first and second sub. That to me, obviously, I understand.
They were winning 3-0 at the time, though, weren't they?
Sure, but why not leave him on and sub somebody else off? But again, I'll just leave it there. I'll just say that I wouldn't mind if Pizarro subbed out, because you might come out of a game, the coach might want to put somebody else in. But being one of the first 2 subs when you're on a hat trick and you're feeling good and you're playing well and you're still showing energy, that I could slightly have a criticism for Phil Neville about, and that I can see Rodolfo Pizarro's reasoning for being frustrated. But we'll leave it there. We'll let the listeners decide what side of the coin they're on.
Team Pizarro.
Well, we know you're not Team Pizarro. We know you're not Team
There you go.
Pizarro. We know you're you're anti Pizarro. Pizarro
Team
Pinata.
Team Phil.
All right. Well, let's touch on the game. It was a 3-1 victory for Inter Miami. They pretty much cruise more or less to the finish line. They get off to a 3-0 lead before even conceding, and they only concede off a Kieran Gibbs goal. Rodolfo Pizarro with 2 finishes, the first off of a nifty cutback in the 15th minute, his second in the 48th off of a great lobbed effort over Toronto FC goalkeeper Quentin Westberg. The second goal, which proved to be the game winner, was Robbie Robinson with his left foot. So we'll touch on all of that. This was the lineup quickly before we go into our takeaways. It was Nick Marsman in goal, Lewis Morgan as the right wing back, Leandro Gonzalez Pires as the right center back, Nicolas Figal as the middle of the 3 center backs, Christian McCoon at left center back, Kieran Gibbs as the left wing back. Your midfield was Gregory and Victor Ulloa, who came in for Blaise Matuidi, and then your front 3 was Rodolfo Pizarro on the right, Gonzalo Higuain at striker, and Robbie Robinson on the left. Steve, what was your biggest takeaway from this match, Pizarro versus Neville notwithstanding?
Just a rarity, and it was just pretty straightforward. Got ahead early on, and then just sort of kept at it. Some nice goals. Never really looked in any trouble, and I think that's just what they needed. There's so many of the games recently have been edge of your seat, or you're just not sure how it's going to go until right to the last second. So I think just just a calm, sort of comprehensive, straightforward-ish win was exactly what they needed. Scored some nice goals. Both Pizarro's goals were not decent strikes, weren't they? So I thought they did great.
They did do great. It has to be taken into consideration. Of course, it has to be noted that they were playing Toronto FC, the worst team in the league, the team that had given up the most goals even entering the night, even before they gave up 3 to Inter Miami. They had fired their head coach earlier in the season. They had given up 41 or 40 plus goals before playing against Inter Miami. So the opposition, the level of the opposition was not very good, but Inter Miami did what it had to do. It did its job, took care of business at home. 3 more points in what was an important week. They needed to win both those games to really give themselves a chance. They are now 5 points off of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference with a lot of the season still to go, some games in hand. So things are looking pretty bright for Inter Miami. I will say that my biggest takeaway was Pizarro's confident performance. Again, you have to take it into context against the team that they were playing against, which gave up a lot of chances, a lot of clear-cut chances. Pizarro even had 2 other opportunities, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he could have put away and he didn't. Inter Miami found a lot of space, exploited the space, did a good job of all of that, and took care of business at home. But for me, Pizarro could be breaking back into the starting lineup with a performance like this, because obviously the performance is what is most important. But after the game, he was named to the MLS All-Star game, chosen by Don Garber or by MLS. He was also named to the MLS Team of the Week, and he was also named the MLS Player of the Week. So quite a bit of plaudits for Rodolfo Pizarro in the last few days. Obviously, he's had a great week.
Obviously, with his Mexican sort of background and stuff and Liga MX history.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I have colleagues here since I've arrived in LA, and I've had people ask me, why Rodolfo Pizarro over someone like Gonzalo Higuain or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Look, he's here for mostly marketing purposes. Sure, you could take into account the sporting side and say, well, he's coming off of a good week. Sure, but All-Star games, especially MLS All-Star game is done, especially this one, is done for marketing purposes. And both Javier Chicharito Hernandez and Carlos Vela, the 2 biggest Mexican stars in MLS, are unavailable for this one due to injury. They were supposed to play. They were on the roster. They're not going to be playing in Wednesday night's match because of injury. So that takes away a good bit of that Mexican marketability from the MLS side. So
because MLS are very keen to just briefly, MLS are very keen to establish a very strong relationship with Liga MX moving forward, aren't they?
Sure, and it's strategic. They want to appeal to maybe Liga MX fans, not only in Mexico but also Liga MX fans in the United States that maybe don't follow MLS, that don't watch MLS or keep track of it on a regular basis. There's obviously a very big untapped pool of football fans, soccer fans in the United States, be it Mexican, be it doesn't European, be it South American, that don't really follow MLS, and they want to tap into, at least in this case, using this strategy to tap into more of the Mexican fan base that exists in this country. So, actually, funny enough, quick side note, had a fan that sat behind me on the flight to LA who was wearing an Inter Miami jersey, the La Palma, the black one with the pink lines, and I thought he was coming to LA to watch the game, the All-Star game, but he was actually from LA. He has family in South Florida. He was of Mexican descent. He had his two sons with him, and he said he had gone to the game against Toronto FC. He showed me pictures and everything. I actually shared the news when we landed about Pizarro being called up, so he was pretty happy about that. He's now a Miami Total Football follower. He followed the social media accounts and probably will listen to the podcast. So shout out to him if he does. But yeah, going back to Pizarro, I think he's starting to break his way back into the lineup because we've gone on a pretty wide tangent here. Do you think with his form that he showed as of late, because you also take into account he scored the game winner in the midweek match last week, is he a first choice player again right now, or does he still have something to prove to really get back into the lineup on a consistent basis?
I think so. Yeah, I think he is. He's definitely a first choice right now because he's performing. In the past he hasn't done anything. He just faded in and out of games, barely registered, a few little touches here and there. But he looks lively. He's scoring goals. I think he even smiled the other night just before, obviously, this terrible bust-up with Phil Neville. But, yeah, absolutely on form. And that's all they want. That's all they want from these guys, is just for them to just produce the performances that warrants, paying them the big bucks. So, yeah, absolutely. And if he's playing well, like he is, he's a great asset.
I'm sure he's certainly feeling important right now. Remember, because that is the quote that he said after the stoppage time winner against the Chicago Fire, that he hadn't felt important for much of this season. Surely feels important right now, given everything that's happened to him over the past few days, which again has been very noteworthy. And see, that important thing is also something maybe I didn't mention in the discussion about Phil Neville and subbing him out. You're not making him feel all that important when you sub him out. So that is something to take into consideration. Steve, before we switch gears to another player who had a good showing and some other noteworthy news that's happened as of late, I wanted to just quickly get your thoughts on the opposition, because to me that's very important when we're talking about this game, because again, this is the first time in Inter Miami history that they've won a game by more than one goal. And the winning back-to-back games is probably symptomatic of just the good run of form that they're in. But Inter Miami's never won a game by more than one goal. It's always a nervy finish or a stoppage time goal to get back into it or to pull it out late, or it has been, at least up until this point. How much do you put into Toronto FC being a bad team? Obviously, Inter Miami's in a good way, but how much do you put into Toronto FC being not the biggest challenge for Inter Miami?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're on a pretty desperate run, aren't they?
And they were poor, man. They were poor. But then
they played against Chicago. They played against Cincinnati. I guess Montreal a bit further up, but they've played against a few of these bottom teams, the Red Bulls, and have struggled. Yes, all right, Toronto are quite clearly probably one of the worst teams in the league right now, but the cliche, you can only beat what's put in front of you. Yeah, sure. Not the strongest team, but they're the teams you got to deal with. And then when they do beat Nashville or they do beat Montreal, or they try and get a result against Atlanta or DC or Philadelphia or any of the Orlando getting a draw, then these are the sort of building blocks that they need. Those kind of teams should be dispatched like they were dispatched on Saturday night.
No, absolutely. And again, Inter Miami did what it had to do. Did so in impressive fashion, so much so that we heard some oles ring out in the stadium on a couple of occasions towards the end, which I thought was a lot of fun. Obviously we haven't been able to hear that at DrivePink Stadium a lot because Inter Miami's not normally in positions comfortable enough positions where fans can start chanting "Ole, Ole" as they string together some passing sequences. Thought it added to the atmosphere incredibly. That was pretty cool to see, I think. So, but again, I think the level of the opposition has to be taken into consideration just so that we don't get carried away. Two more players I want to touch on before we end this segment. One is Robbie Robinson, who has been called up by Chile's national team, something I alluded to as a possibility over the weekend when I wrote about him for Miami Total Futbol. Chile has called him up for upcoming World Cup qualifiers. This will be his first time playing for or representing Chile on the international level, representing anyone on the international level. So congratulations to Robbie Robinson for that. Now, I would also say let's congratulate him for scoring a goal with his left foot, because that's been a point of criticism that I've brought up here on this podcast and in other points of analysis or other areas where I cover the team. He really refrains from using his left foot. But in this one, he takes Omar Gonzalez for a lesson in Robbie Robinson's growing arsenal of tricks, because he gets the ball in space, is one-on-one with Omar Gonzalez, slows his dribbling run to set himself up. It's on the left side, mind you. He fakes like he's going to go into his preferred right foot, which is his dominant foot, which he normally goes to more often than not. Omar Gonzalez clearly is expecting Robbie Robinson to go onto his right foot, cut onto his right foot, but Robinson then fakes that move, goes to the left, puts himself in a left-footed posture to score, and he puts the ball into the back of the net with that left foot. So, showing some growth in his development. This is what he said after the game about him using his left foot.
I've been practicing that with the left because defenders, I've been cutting in on my right a lot, and defenders are really, they're starting to see that and just force me the other way. So, yeah, I just faked the shot with my right. He went for it, hit it with my left. It was a goal.
Hearing that from Robbie Robinson, and then not only hearing that, but seeing him execute on the field, using that left foot, gaining more confidence in it, cutting onto it, I think that's pretty notable because it just makes his game more well-rounded. It makes him more unpredictable. That gives Inter Miami a more lethal weapon in the attack if he gains more confidence in that left foot. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts there? I haven't really talked to you about this topic for several weeks now.
Yeah, I think he's one of the kind of success stories, I think, of this season. Just his progress. He's a shadow of the player that he was sort of last year, where you wouldn't have really depended on him or thought he was sort of up to much. I always thought he was very raw. Always go back to that first game in LAFC where he looked out of his depth. But he's a handful now. I think Phil Neville rates him. I think this Chile thing, if he accepts, he's not 100% going to accept it yet, is he? Is that right?
I imagine he's going. I
think it's also. I mean,
So on his Instagram account and his Instagram stories, he has posted over the last few months, I won't say a dozen times, but a couple times at least, him at the Chilean embassy, him just sitting there waiting for, obviously for anyone that's gone to an embassy knows that it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of sitting and waiting around. So him sitting in the lobby or wherever, and he's taking pictures of, just the signage or whatever's there at the Chilean embassy. If he's
watching goals of Alexis Sanchez playing for Arsenal,
But if he's at the Chilean embassy, if he's done the legwork to get the necessary passport that he needs to become a dual national to be able to represent Chile, I imagine he's going to accept this call up. I wouldn't see any other reason for him to do all that if he doesn't plan to accept the call up. Which
he's got an easy game first up, Brazil. So I mean,
The 3 games Chile plays in this next round of World Cup qualifying are Brazil, Ecuador, and Colombia. So no easy test there. But Chile is going through a generational change. They are trying to find new players. They called up Ben Brereton during the Copa America, an English-born striker, but who has Chilean descent. Didn't speak a whole lot of Spanish. It was actually a talking point while he was with all the Chilean players in the hotels and going through the months-long tournament that he was trying to learn some Spanish. They were trying to teach him some Spanish. They were obviously teasing him a bit and trying to get him to say some words that he didn't understand. So I'm not sure if Robbie Robinson speaks Spanish. I don't think he does. I'm not sure though. But if I imagine that he will accept the call up and they'll integrate him into the group, try to get him familiar, also get a closer look at him and see how he does. But Chile is going through a generational change. They are looking to improve an aging squad. So Robbie Robinson could be part of that. For me, him using his left foot just to close out on him, again, it gives Inter Miami a bigger weapon in the attack, because now not only can he go to his right, which is what he's mostly done, almost awkwardly at times, he's kind of always forced things onto that right foot, but now if he's using his left foot a little bit more, because in the second half he also had a play where he took the defender to the byline and then whipped in a left-footed cross, a good left-footed cross to the back post. Nobody met the ball, nobody from Inter Miami found the ball, but it just gives Inter Miami more versatility in terms of how they can attack. He gives Robbie Robinson more versatility in how he can attack players and create chances for himself and for others. So that raises his level a good amount and will only be better for Inter Miami and for his career. So good on Robbie Robinson for continuing to develop. Obviously, he's still a young player, but not everyone develops or goes with and gains the confidence of developing their weaker foot. Next player I wanted to quickly touch on was LGP, Leandro Gonzalez Pires, because he was also named to the team of the week like Rodolfo Pizarro. He got 2 assists in this game, so his name pops out on the box score a little bit more. He was also really good defensively. I gave him a 9 along with Pizarro in my post-game player ratings. Gonzalez Pires has for a while now been passing very well out of the back, clipping in those long balls into space for players to run onto. This is not the first game that he has helped create opportunities, and this is another weapon, talking about weapons for the attack, this has been another weapon for the Inter Miami attack that has really shown as of late. If you remember the game against the Chicago Fire, the goal that Robbie Robinson scores, the equalizer to make it 2-2 in that match, Gonzalo Higuain feeds Robbie Robinson, but it's Leandro Gonzalez Pires who hits that initial pass into space down the right to Gonzalo Higuain. So Leandro Gonzalez Pires has been doing this. It's been if you remember the New York City FC game as well, he was helping create some of those dangerous opportunities. What did you think of his game? What did you think of his performance? And obviously that ability to pick out a pass and help create some danger in the final third.
Yeah, I mean that helps, isn't it? Because if you just got a centre half that you can keep booting the ball forward, it's going to keep coming back. So for someone with the ability can just ping those balls from defence and set up attacks is key. His defending has been good. He's pretty agile, isn't he? Physical, gets about. He's not the tallest, but he certainly puts himself about. So we've touched on it before that that there had been a few problems with him behind the scenes. It's quite difficult to deal with. I think he's a demonstrative kind of guy. He's obviously fallen out with coaches in the past. He remains one of the sort of bigger earners outside of the DPs that potentially they could look to move on. He's probably one of the more movable assets, I would have thought. But he's differences aside, he's been playing well, and they defended pretty well the other night, and he sort of held it together in a sort of defence where they have been creaking a lot. He gives a little bit more reassurance, and certainly in this kind of form.
Phil Neville said after the game that Gonzalez Pires has been playing like a leader, and that they're happy with him, they're pleased with him. He's been very consistent. He also said that his leadership has been good behind the scenes. No one asked him about that directly, but Phil Neville dropped that in there. Obviously, we know that's what's said in front of cameras, not necessarily 100% the truth. So I believe you that there has been probably some unhappiness at some point this season. But right now he's playing well, and at the end of the day, or at least when it comes to this season, given the situation they're in, they're not moving any more players. I think that they'll take what they're getting from him because he's playing pretty well, again, on both sides of the ball, not only defensively holding down his spot and doing well with his marks and coverage, but he's also adding something to the attack with his passes. Even the pass that he hits to Robbie Robinson for that goal this weekend against Toronto FC, he does so with an outside the foot pass, tres dedos, as they say in Spanish, and finds him streaking into space, a perfectly weighted pass. So Gonzalez Pires is playing really, really well as of late, and that's something, we've touched on a bunch of different players that have been playing well. McCoon, Gonzalez Pires, Ulloa. More players are playing better, and obviously it's a result of not only them raising their level, but the team raising its level. When the team plays better, so do almost all the players. Because when I went back and looked at this game, nobody really had a bad game for Inter Miami. I think the lowest grade I gave was to Kieran Gibbs, 5.5, and that's pretty much because he scored an own goal. So besides that nobody had a bad game. But again, they were playing Toronto FC. Let's leave it there, Steve. We have the Sunshine Clásico, El Clásico del Sol to preview. I know you're not happy about MLS's scheduling there, but we will touch on that as well as do the Q&A session, but we'll do so after this.
Well, he wanted the match ball. He wanted to score goals. He's obviously been through an awful lot, and he probably felt that it was a game where he could have got more chances in the game to score. And what we said to him was, it's a team game. Indiana didn't probably deserve to be left out. Probably Blaise Matuidi didn't deserve to be left out. But it's a team game. We're showing the depth of our squad, and I actually really loved his reaction in terms of the anger to come off, because we've seen many times this season when he's been disappointed coming off, where he's been disappointed in himself. Now he's got that hunger and desire to want to stay on the pitch and score goals. He's got his confidence back. 3 goals in 2 games tells me he's just getting better and better. So I liked his reaction of anger to come off. And that's what we were talking about at the end. And he's in the dressing room there. He's put the music on, and he's 100% behind everyone. And it was just a reminder to everybody that it's a team game. This Inter Miami aren't going to win with one player on the field. We're going to win because we tried that at the start of the season. We tried it when players were doing their own thing, playing individually. Now, because we're playing as a team, as a squad, we're beginning to win games of football, and that's what I reminded him of.
Okay, Steve, so Inter Miami travels this Friday to Central Florida to take on Orlando City, in-state rival Orlando City at Exploria Stadium in the latest edition of what I call the Sunshine Clásico, El Clásico del Sol. No, you're not happy about the scheduling because they just played a few weeks ago, and they did so in Orlando, a 1-1 draw there for Inter Miami. Orlando City's in second place in the Eastern Conference. They are coming off a victory, a 1-0 victory over the Chicago Fire. They have not lost in league play since a 5-0 drubbing on July 25th at the hands of New York City FC. Not sure about Nani's status. He's not playing in the All-Star game. Not sure if he'll make it for Friday. Regardless, what do you expect from this one? What do you expect from Orlando City on Friday night?
More of the same, I think, than the game on the 4th of August. I mean, you should look at their last four games, 3 1-alls and a 1-0 win. So not scoring a lot, not really letting in too many either, but are conceding. So I think, if anything, their attack is kind of faltering a bit. So I think it's going to be tight. It's a derby. They're always kind of tight matches, and certainly the 1-all was exactly like that, wasn't it? So I expect more of the same. But they're doing well. But then, like you say, from that 5-0 defeat in NYCFC, they've only won 2 of the next 5. So they're not in amazing form, even though they did most of their good work, I think, a little bit earlier in the season. But I don't think Inter Miami will go there worried about anything really. They're full of confidence, and after winning 2 games on the spin, it's not exactly a free hit, but they've done their part of it. They had to win those home games, and now this one they can, they go there with confidence.
Do you think they play for the win, or do you think that they'll...
Absolutely.
Do you think they'll be a little more reactive? No, because there's playing for the win in, you could say, all right, we're going to play for the win by being defensive-minded, but in the terms of playing for the win, I mean, do you think Inter Miami's going to try to come out and have the ball and dictate the tempo, or do you think they'll take up more of a defensive posture and try to hit on the counter?
No, I think, they're confident, and I think confidence is everything, another cliche. And I think it helps. If you're going there and you're off the back of 4 or 5 bad results, then that just breeds a sort of negativity within the team. But I think no, I think they go there full of confidence. Why not? And I think then that will give them more reason to be on the front foot and have a go. And if they can get an early goal or get their noses ahead, then I think they'll be confident that they can keep out an attack that, like I say, have scored 4 goals in the last 4 games. So no, I think they'll go on the front foot and they go there and they'll be positive. Why not?
So for me, this will be a very interesting game, another interesting benchmark to see where Inter Miami stands, because Inter Miami clearly has improved as of late, and they've gotten to the point where they can beat teams in the bottom part of the Eastern Conference and compete with teams in the top part of the Eastern Conference, but they haven't shown an ability to consistently beat the teams further up the standings. Not yet, anyway. They beat Nashville SC 2-1 with a very late goal, but besides that, they haven't beaten anyone that's really at near the top of the East. So it'll be curious to see how they come out in this one, how Phil Neville approaches a game where Orlando City can hurt you in a lot of ways, especially if Nani is on the field. Orlando City will be at home. Orlando City will be expected to set the tempo, dictate the run of play. So I imagine we'll see maybe a little bit more defensive-minded Inter Miami, looking maybe a little bit more on the counterattack. Obviously, I don't think they'll venture away from this 5-2-3 formation that we've seen from them for much of the last few weeks. So curious to see how Inter Miami does, though, in that shape against a very good opponent and obviously the in-state rival. Steve, what's the key to the game for Inter Miami? What do you think they need to do to win? Also of note, Rodolfo Pizarro is expected to be back and available for this one, though his midweek participation and traveling could, there's not information that we've heard, but, supposition here from me, could impact or could influence whether he's available from the start. Because if he plays Wednesday, let's say 45 minutes, which is standard in MLS All-Star game for most players, and then he has to travel from LA back to Florida on Thursday, doesn't get any training sessions with the team, maybe he doesn't start in this one. But that's just what I would guess. But anyway, what's the key to the game for you for Inter Miami?
Yeah, not ideal preparation for our new star man, but it's a solid base, isn't it? I think that's the whole thing. They've got to try and just work from the back, be solid. Don't let any silly goals. It's all common sense stuff, really. Set plays, defending the set plays better. They're gonna be tested more than they were on Saturday night for sure. But I just think they've got a few goals in them now. And they look more potent going forward. How about that?
So you think the key to the game is being tight defensively?
I think so, yeah. Because everything starts with that. I think if they keep it tight defensively, they know now that they've got goals other than Gonzalo Higuain, there's Pizarro, there's Robbie Robinson, all these guys.
Kieran Gibbs scored last game, so yeah, they've been getting goals from different areas, which is something Phil Neville had been talking about recently. He wanted to see other players chip in. I agree with you. The key to the game for me in this one for Inter Miami to have a chance to win, to even get a result, because even a result here is a good result for Inter Miami. Getting a draw is being tight at the back, being defensively sound, trying to keep that 0, because this is a pretty mind-blowing stat. Maybe doesn't catch anyone by surprise, but it's still just pretty mind-blowing when you hear it. Inter Miami has only recorded one clean sheet this season, and that was back in Week 3 against Nashville SC, the 0-0 pretty dull affair up in Nashville, Tennessee. So Inter Miami has not been all that good defensively. It's why I asked Phil Neville after this most recent game against Toronto if it mattered to him that Inter Miami wasn't able to keep that 0 at the back due to an own goal. He said it didn't matter, but I would imagine it does matter, not only for the coaching staff, but for the players, the defenders. They probably want to keep a 0 at the back by now just for confidence, just like goal scorers want to score goals to raise their confidence. Defenders want to keep a 0 at the back just to say, look, all right, we put in the work, we're able to do it. So not only for confidence sake, but I think because of the matchup and the setting in Orlando against a very good team, I think keeping it tight at the back is important, especially on defensive set pieces, because, again, Inter Miami scored an own goal in this one against Toronto FC. That's now the 4th time in, I believe, 5 matches that Inter Miami has conceded off of a set piece. So need to be better there. Something Phil Neville had mentioned in the lead-up to the Toronto FC game, that he and his coaching staff after the Chicago Fire match, they thought about that for a while, how they had conceded again on a set piece. So definitely think that that's the key to the game. Steve, what changes could we see to the lineup? Like we said before, we don't think Pizarro will probably start due to the preparation, the week's worth of preparation being pretty different for him with traveling and a midweek All-Star game. So what do you think? Who replaces him in the lineup? Is it straight up like for like? Well, not like for like, but straight up, will it be Indiana Vassilev on the right wing? Yet again, after after he went to the bench in this one against Toronto FC, or do you see somebody else going up top or out there on the wings, rather?
Yeah, he's got. Yeah, I mean Vasilev is a good option now, isn't he? Federico Higuain's experience that could help. So he's got a couple of options there. We're talking about, he can field some different formations now and different lineups, which I think is key because different players are finally stepping up and putting their hand up and saying, I can do something. So maybe for I like Vasilev. I think he's good. He's energetic. He's lively. Kind of makes things happen. He runs the defences. So that's an option. Or Federico Higuain just to keep things moving along. And just keep the tempo going. Maybe that's an option. But both I'd be happy with either, to be honest. But I think Vasilev probably just gets to start just for his energy.
Yeah, I don't think Federico Higuain comes into this one. Actually, Federico Higuain hasn't really played much as of late. So I think it'll be Indiana Vasilev, who started last week's game, the midweek game against the Chicago Fire, and scored a goal. Didn't have the greatest performance. He only had 15 touches, which was pretty low. The lowest on the team for Inter Miami, at least in terms of the starting lineup. So I do think he'll come back into the lineup for Pizarro. The other real question mark in this one is, do we see Blaise Matuidi or do we see Victor Ulloa next to Gregory in that midfield line? What do you think? Who do you think Phil Neville goes with, and who would you go with?
It's just, again, yeah.
Victor Ulloa started in the game against Toronto FC. Did a pretty good job. So
yeah, Matuidi didn't start, did he? So I'd probably just go with him again. Just big game experience. I mean, Ulloa's been around at the block as well, hasn't he? But I'd probably go with Matuidi, wouldn't you?
So you would go Matuidi. Do you think that's what Phil Neville does?
I mean, I'm not Phil Neville, so I don't know.
But right, but do you think he goes? If we're predicting, do you think he goes Matuidi?
I think he'll like just using a bit of that big game experience. I think he'll probably go Matuidi, I would have thought. Yeah. I'm saying that I've got absolutely no idea what he's going to do, by the way. So
I would go Victor Ulloa because he's the safer of the two picks. Like Matuidi, if he's on his game, can be a bigger influencer than Victor Ulloa. But you also know that Blaise Matuidi hasn't necessarily always played to that level, that he can have dips in performance levels. So it's a gamble. Either if you go with Matuidi, the payoff might be higher, but the risk is greater. So I would personally go with Ulloa in this one. I think Phil Neville will go with Blaise Matuidi because of his experience, because of Orlando City's midfield is his strong point, or is one of his strong points. So I imagine Blaise Matuidi will get the nod, and Phil Neville will be hoping that he sees the Blaise Matuidi that we saw against Nashville SC, where he was influential on both sides of the park. So that's my predicted lineup right there. The same lineup we mentioned earlier, the one that we talked about for the game against Toronto FC, with the two changes being Indiana Vasilev for Rodolfo Pizarro and Blaise Matuidi coming back in for Victor Ulloa. Those are my predictions for this Friday's lineup. The exact same team minus those two changes. Those will be the only two changes I think we will see. Steve, quickly, what is your prediction for this Friday's result? Does Inter Miami get 3 points, 1 or 0?
I'm gonna go for a 2-1 Inter Miami win.
So they pull out their first victory in Orlando.
These are heady times. These are heady times.
It's a tough one. I can see a very open game, but I could also see Inter Miami pulling it out with, at long last, a very good defensive performance that leads to a clean sheet, and they get a goal there on the other end to pull off a very big upset, a surprising result, and their first win in Orlando. So I will say 1-0 Inter Miami, and they continue their good run of form and inch closer to the playoff spot. Steve, let's leave it there. We have our Q&A session, so we'll take a quick break and we'll tackle that after this. Primo, it's Q&A time. We've got a few questions, as you can imagine, so let's get to them. We know the drill. First one comes from Dos Knows. Congrats to Robbie Robinson on being called up by Chile. Does that mean he even speaks Spanish? Keep up the good work. So
Okay.
I don't know if Robbie Robinson speaks Spanish. I don't think he does. If he does, I'm pretty sure it's limited, but we'll work to get you more concrete answer. Steve, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there.
No comprende.
All right, next question from Don Cafecito, also about Robbie Robinson in Chile. Do you like Robbie Robinson less now that he plays for Chile and is sipping on real pisco sours? Drink emoji. So that's a little dig at me, since I'm of Peruvian descent, and Peru and Chile are historical rivals, not only on the soccer field, just in terms of in general. And they both claim that they invented pisco sours or pisco, and it's a whole thing. Do I like Robbie Robinson less now? No, I don't like Robbie Robinson less now, but it's good for him, good for his career, good for Inter Miami that Robbie Robinson could be an international player that raises his stock and his value on the team and in the club. Although we have to note that if he does get called up, he'll miss games for Inter Miami most likely, and he's been a very important attacking weapon for them. When he's not been around and has not been able to provide that speed, it's been notable. The attack has suffered or regressed a good bit. So keep an eye out on that. And as for the sipping on real pisco sours, el pisco peruano, amigo. El pisco es peruano. Next question comes from Gabe P. A lot of drafted players are shining in this All-Star game, but with 20% only staying active in the MLS after year 3. How can you guarantee a good draft selection? Is picking early the key? Is the value for money worth spending on top draft picks, or would be better used elsewhere? So, Steve, you want to start there?
I mean, it depends how the players develop, really, doesn't it? I mean, it's an alien system for me to, trying to get my head around it.
This is why I gave it to you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in Europe, you're picking players that have been ensconced within a club for years, like 12, 13 years old. They're already at Arsenal or Liverpool or Man United, whereas, like using Robbie Robinson as an example, they pulled him straight out from Clemson. I mean, going from US college soccer to MLS, that there was a big step up there. So it just depends how the players develop, and I think that's probably what Don Garber wants to see, isn't it? He wants to see these young guys produced and developed in the correct way and become sort of big players, sellable assets at some point. It's difficult, don't you think?
Well, so to answer Gabe P's question, how do you guarantee a good draft selection? You can never guarantee a good draft selection. Like it's another gamble that you take. You're betting on a player to develop into the future to being, whether you think he'll be a long-term starter or just a role player, whatever it is that you think of the player that you drafted at the given time. Now, how do you get a good draft selection? Well, you have to do your homework. Obviously, have a good scouting network that scouts the college games. You have people in that network that will give you good info that you trust. Not only you trust, but that can have an eye for talent. Then the player, you have to take into account the player's personality, his ambitions. What does he want to do? How hungry is he to improve? It's a lot of things. So it's about giving yourself the best opportunity to make sure you make a good decision. Giving yourself the most information to say, all right, this player can not only succeed on the field, but maybe off the field as well. But even then, you could still miss, because the player, once he gets to the professional game, could, lose his motivation. You could see that happen. Or the level up, more physical, faster, decisions need to be taken quicker. That can impact him. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's no guarantee you can ever hit 100%. You have to just try to give yourself as much information as possible to raise your chances of getting as close to 100% as possible in terms of picking somebody. But you'll never really get there. Next question comes from South Parking Lot. He just has a devil emoji as his face, and this is a great question. Watching Pizarro's chip from section 113 was unreal. My question is, how did that boy Brenner react? Laughing emoji times 3. The listeners are having digs at us. The pisco sour. Now you with the Pizarro. Although this is deserved. This is probably deserved.
What do you want me to do? Like, you start crying when he scored? I mean, no. Pleased for him, of course. Is that excellent? When he plays properly and produces stuff that he should be doing as a DP and one of the highest earners, that's awesome. If he'd been doing that consistently throughout his whole Inter Miami career, then it wouldn't be an issue. But he hasn't. We talk about one game. You're saying they're the worst team in MLS, and we're going crazy about him, playing fantastically well, which he has done, and he has done for the last 2 or 3 weeks. To be fair, no, all good, all good. I'm pleased for him, and I think the team need as many of their alleged big stars to really step up. So it's good to see. No negativity here, mate.
Next question comes from Endo. Again, after the game versus Toronto, the players still, all in caps, only thank La Familia. Does the rest of the stadium not exist? We all paid money to come watch our team, in caps, play, and for them to thank only one, in caps, section is complete BS. I need you to bring this up to Phil. So, like we said, Endo, the fact that you're bringing it up, we said this to you on the last pod, the fact that you're bringing it up is obviously helps shine a light on it. Obviously, maybe that's something Inter Miami does need to correct. Obviously, La Familia is the part of the stadium that Inter Miami talks about the most, with good reason, because they are the ones that bring a lot of the atmosphere and the energy. That's not to say that there's not any of that in any of the other three sections, but it's clear to see when you're at the stadium that La Familia in the north stand is the one that provides the most. So that doesn't mean that Inter Miami shouldn't acknowledge the four stands. I agree with you there. So maybe it's something that Inter Miami does have to change, or it is something Inter Miami has to change.
Yeah, I can't speak for the players, but I 100% know that they would, or think that they would certainly appreciate the support they get from supporters who have seen their fair share of pretty bad displays and negativity and whatever. So it's not a great look, but I don't think it's not. I don't. They maybe don't even realise they're doing it or something. I don't know. I don't think there's any slight on the fans. Put it that way. I know that they appreciate all of you guys for sure.
3 more questions, Steve. Next one from Elder Bar. Your thoughts on why Phil subbed out Pizarro versus Toronto FC? Phil's response was whack. Seems he's trying to kill the dude's spotlight. Considering World Cup qualifiers, think we will make the playoffs barely or in a good position. Schedule seems really easy, by the way, except New England till the end. So, Steve, anything you want to add there? We did touch on Pizarro and Neville at length, but anything you want to add there, because Elder Bar thinks Phil's response was whack.
Nah, I'm not going back. I'm not going down that road again. It's a well-trodden road. He can do. I thought it was absolutely fair enough. But in terms of the playoffs, it's looking a hell of a lot brighter now. Only 5 points off DC United, and also with actually 2 games in hand on DC and Montreal. Montreal point ahead, so they're 6 points ahead. So yeah, look, it's all about wins, isn't it? A couple of wins, and they are right up in this table. When at 14, if you can't finish in the top 7, you're struggling, really, aren't you? So it's looking much brighter with still a lot of points to play for.
The mid-season pod that we did, I said I didn't think Inter Miami was going to make the playoffs, and that was a little bit over a week ago. The other day, after the win against Toronto FC, I started looking at the rest of the schedule again and started doing the math, sacando la calculadora, taking out the calculator, and I was like, Inter Miami might be able to do this, actually. They might be able to, because like Elder Bar mentions here, the rest of the schedule, by and large, is pretty favorable for Inter Miami. Now, they play the Columbus Crew twice. They play New England Revolution and New York City FC, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, thinking off the top of my head. They play them both in the final 2 weeks of the season. So, for Inter Miami's sake, those are 2 top teams in the East. You probably don't want to be facing them with your playoff lives on the line. You want to hope that you're at least already high enough that those results won't make or break you. But it's looking pretty good for Inter Miami. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not, because it is looking good for Inter Miami based on how they're playing, based on the opposition on the schedule. The playoffs are now a real possibility, but obviously the team has to stay focused on the task at hand, stay grounded, and take each match as it comes. That is a cliche, but if they start thinking too far ahead of themselves, then they could get themselves into trouble. As for the Phil versus Pizarro incident or exchange, I agree with you, Elder Bar. I think, like I said earlier, Pizarro should have been left in a little bit longer and not been one of the first 2 subs. Next question comes from Lucho Lalo. Franco, feeling good on these 2 wins. Only thing that kills it is Don Garber selecting Pizarro and LGP for the All-Star festivities. We could have gone ham on Orlando, and with the Joker on fire, that could be an away win in Orlando. WTF, no Galese and no Nani, what gives? And then he follows up with, can Garber grow up already and get rid of this All-Star game altogether? Waste of time, in my opinion, trying to be like other sports here in the States. So LGP did not make the All-Star game. LGP just quickly made the team of the week. He did not make the All-Star game. Only Pizarro did. So just to clarify that before we confuse anybody. As for, I'm not a big fan of the All-Star game. I'm here in LA. I love LA. But I'm not a huge fan of the All-Star game, especially in the middle of the season. It's done just for marketing purposes, by and large. It takes away players from their season. Like we said with Pizarro, it impacts their availability for their next league games on occasion. Some star players don't even end up coming because of injuries. So I agree that I'm not a huge fan of the All-Star game, but that's just how MLS has operated for a long time and will probably continue to do so.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they should look at the scheduling. I don't think it's right that they have it on a Wednesday and then there's games on a Friday night. When, I mean, in Pizarro's case, I mean, I don't think that's right. I think do it at the beginning of the season, do it at the end of the season.
But you can't do an All-Star game at the beginning of the season, right? Because you won't know who's the All-Star.
Well, you could do for the All-Stars for the previous season, I guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very American thing. I covered the NBA All-Star when I was in New York, and that's the first time I'd ever been there, and I was really shocked at how it literally was a training game. It was like 5,000 plays, like 4,028. It was just points everywhere, just back and forward. But the pre-build-up stuff was great, and the skills challenges, and just I did MLS, I think last year in Orlando, the year before. The year before that, and and it's a good networking, good chance to see people, etc., etc. But and if anything, they should have just pushed the Miami game just back a bit. I don't think that's fair. To be fair, I don't think it's fair.
Well, we know you're not happy with the scheduling of playing Orlando in general yet again, and now doing so shortly.
Just another nail in the Orlando coffin.
So actually, Steve, I missed out on Lucho Lalo's third tweet because there was a third tweet, and he said, I'm sure Steve El Primo agrees with me, LOL. So, true to form, Steve El Primo does agree with you, Lucho Lalo. I will say this, because it's something you just touched on that I wanted to touch on, that I don't know if the average fan knows. A lot of what happens at All-Star as well is networking, but it's also a chance for league executives, club executives to get together and have conversations and dialogue and, be able to see each other a little bit closer face to face. Sometimes trades get made or, the seeds get planted for trades at these type of events. There's also a lot of MLS meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's also done with that in mind, right? That everyone from around the league gets together and is able to interact and talk and see each other face to face. It's like a big convention almost, right? Like if you were talking about a business, there's conventions throughout the year so people can come in and talk and network and everything. That's what MLS All-Star is as well for the executives around the league. So also something to take into consideration for why this game is also held. Next question comes from Frank J. Forte. What do you make of Pizarro's improved play? Small sample size, but is he being used differently, or has he figured out one actually has to try to succeed in MLS? Any other factors?
Well, you mentioned it before that he's actually said that he's happy. You said that?
Well, he said, right, that he feels important. Well, he didn't feel important before, so the assumption is that he feels more important now. He was also struggling with some personal things that he missed having his family around. So it seems like the Gold Cup call-up, as Phil Neville had mentioned in a previous press conference, definitely boosted Pizarro's confidence and has helped him rediscover some of that magic. But, if you're asking me, Frank, I will say that the sample size is too small because he did play well against Toronto FC and he scored 2 goals and he looked a confident player. But again, it's Toronto FC. I think he will have confidence. Again, these last few days he's been named to all different types of things, won a bunch of different accolades and awards. So that's going to help his confidence. But even if you start from the beginning here with this recent little surge from him, it was against the Chicago Fire, and I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm just saying it was against the Chicago Fire in which he scored a stoppage time goal, well-taken finish, but that game he didn't perform incredibly. I know Phil Neville after the game said that, he thought Pizarro won the game with both his on-the-ball efforts as well as off the ball, but when I rewatched it back, he just had the game-winning decisive goal. If he hadn't scored that goal, we wouldn't be saying, oh, Pizarro had a good game against the Chicago Fire. It was because of the goal in stoppage time at the very end that he had a huge impact. But other than that, it wasn't like he influenced that game all that much or was that sharp or that good. But he scored, and that was important because it raised his confidence. Then he goes against Toronto FC, feeling better, scores 2 goals, raises his confidence further. Now he's involved in the All-Star game. That'll help even more so. And imagine if he scores on Wednesday. It'll go through the roof. Steve Brenner's head might explode from overload. But Steve, anything you wanted to add there?
No, I mean, it is a cliche, and we've mentioned it before, but it's just confidence. I think if the team are playing well and everything, it's relatively settled now, behind the scenes. Of course, Phil Neville's still fighting a lot of fires, but, they seem to be sort of a bit more together than they have been in the past, certainly under your old amigo, Diego Alonso. It helps him. It definitely helps him. Like you say, we don't know all the personal stuff that he was going through, just like we were unaware about the stuff with Gonzalo Higuain and his partner and his baby not being with him. So sometimes you don't get the full picture, and it's I think that's why it's frustrating sometimes for players, because they have to face criticism from people like me and you or on social media, when they must sit there sometimes think, if only you really knew the truth of what is going down, then maybe you would have a bit more of an understanding. So that little glimpse he's given us into his personal life could maybe answer a few questions.
Okay, well, that does it for the Q&A session. Steve, give us your final thoughts. I'll give mine, and we'll wrap up the show after that.
Yeah, all positive. I think they're on a good run. They're riding a kind of a crest of a wave. I think this, after those relatively straightforward, well, the first one was straightforward, but the second one was against Toronto. I think they go into a tough game against one of the best teams in the East. With nothing to lose, and not, like I said, not exactly a free hit, but they've done the hard work in getting those 2 home wins. So this is they can go there and have a real go with them.
My final thought will be on David Beckham, who, for the superstitious out there, here's a stat for you. Since his return to Miami and since he dyed his hair blonde, Inter Miami has gone 4-0-2 in games that he's attended live and in person. And that's not just home games, because he attended a match against Orlando City, the last match against Orlando City, up in Central Florida, and Inter Miami got a draw in that one. So make of that what you will, but Inter Miami has not lost when he's been in attendance. The game that they did lose was the only one since his return that he was not present for, and that was that 2-0 defeat to New York City FC in Harrison, New Jersey at Red Bull Arena. So I don't know if David Beckham's plans for this Friday are to go back to Orlando again, but I imagine Phil Neville is probably nudging his old friend and boss to tag along on the bus ride or the plane ride and say, hey, come with us because we could use that presence. Which, by the way, he also, after the game, kicked the ball around with his son Romeo. After the Toronto FC win, they kicked about on the field quite a bit. David Beckham, full suit with a tie, dress shoes, and he was still able to juggle and show off a very neat touch. I actually took a video of it and posted it onto YouTube and Twitter. ESPN FC actually picked it up, and it's gone pretty viral there. I'm still getting notifications as we speak on my Twitter handle. So if you want to see David Beckham and showing that elegant, clean touch with that right foot,
what a player. Never loses it.
Yeah, like they say in Spanish, you can lose... I forget what the saying is, but it's essentially that you never lose the class or the quality. The quality's always there.
For my weekly Class of '92 update, if anyone wants to delve into the Beckham archive of fantastic goals, just Google the free kick he scored against Greece in 2001 to cement England's place at the World Cup the following year. Just watch that.
Oh, I remember the saying. I don't even think it's necessarily a Spanish one. It's form is temporary, class is permanent. So that fits for what we saw from David Beckham this past weekend. Steve, that does it for this week's pod. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Like I said before, I hope it sounds up to standard because I'm in a makeshift office in the bedroom I'm in at the Airbnb here in Los Angeles. We'll be back early next week to review the game against Orlando City, the Sunshine Clásico, El Clásico del Sol. We'll also probably touch on the All-Star game and the performance of Rodolfo Pizarro. put forth, even though we know Steve Brenner is not a big fan of the All-Star game, and neither am I. But that does it for this week's show. Please give us a follow on all our social media channels as well. For Steve Brenner, I am Franco Panizo. This is Miami Total Football Radio. We'll talk to you guys again next week.